when they're not supposed to, and the lid's open. And it does that. So we're gonna load a kill. This is the bottom of the kill, and the walls are coming up, and there's about an inch between this and the walls of the kill. So when I'm doing a bisque, they can touch. So I'm gonna make nests. And the first thing I do is I find pots that nest. I'm gonna make all these little nests.
Can they still touch if they have an underglaze on them in the bisque?
Yeah, they can touch.
Okay.
So this is not quite so good because this is touching here. And that's a pressure point that's focused. So I don't wanna have it pushing on the lip of a pot. That is a little bit too wide. So I wanna find something that sits down in there a little better. And this might work. Okay, that's good. And then I look around. This is like a puzzle. Okay, so there's a nest, and the nest needs to fit beneath my post. And here's a post, and I'm gonna use 3 posts, and they're gonna be in thirds. And this will fit under the post, and so I can make, I can put as many pots on there as I can fit in the bisque kiln. So I did this the other day, and I was getting like 25 pots on the shelf. And that means I could get close to 80 or 100 pots in the little kiln. Which is a lot of pots. Now, in a glaze firing, they'd all have to be separated and not touching, so that's a whole nother story. But it's nice for me when I go to load, because I can kind of go shopping over here and find an assortment of sizes and make really nice little nests. And if you go home and you make 50 things that are exactly the same, you're not gonna nest. So, you know, I'm lucky. I've got this whole inventory of things that can nest. You know, when you put the shelf on here, you have to put the next set of posts directly over these. If you put them over here, then you're likely to break the shelf. But this way, the weight is transferred to the post below, and there's no stress on the shelf. The only weight on the shelf is the pots and the weight of the shelf itself. So that's how you load a bisque. Like I said, you can get 80 to 100 pots in the little one, and probably, although the big kiln is not that much bigger, way more pots in the big kiln. When you have a 10 brick kiln and you start firing wide things, it's very inefficient. So that's not exactly a full-size plate, but you know, we're pushing it to get 3 pieces that diameter on the shelf. Whereas in the big kiln, I can get 4 pieces that size easily on a shelf. So the bigger the diameter, the roomier it is. It's you can't just say this is 6 cubic feet and that's 7 cubic feet and it's only 1/6 larger than the small one. It's going to be almost half again as large as the small one.
Is the purpose of a bisque firing to pull all the moisture out of the pot and that's why you can stack them?
Okay, the purpose of the bisque firing is so that you can handle the pots without them breaking, because right now they're friable, which means they break easily.
So structurally they're stronger after a bisque?
Yeah, structurally they're stronger.
And if you dipped a greenware pot into the glaze, it would just melt. It's just like
Right.
adding water.
So these, if I put them in a slot bucket, they're gonna just
So you
dissolve.
can't glaze them, period, before you bisque them?
Now, it is possible to glaze greenware, but it's uncommon.
What's
It's
green?
very economical
Yes,
though,
yes.
because you'll eliminate the bisque altogether. Yeah, some people, they actually apply slips when the pot's on the wheel, and then they spray some glaze on it when it's dry or something. Yeah, it's very efficient.
Be efficient, but
Okay, so that's how to load.
When you have to do a wider pot in single layers without stacking, do you have to adjust the time that you fire?
I always use either the fast or slow bisque, and I let the kiln take care of the ramp.
Okay,
Now, if the load is extremely dense, it's gonna take a little longer than if it's very loose.
so the kiln will figure that out for you. You don't have to do that math.
The kiln will try to fire the pots at the pre-programmed rate.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, once the kiln is on full, it can't move any faster than that. So the way electric kilns work is, it's not like a rheostat on a light bulb where it's dim at first and then brighter and brighter and brighter. You're not changing it in that manner. The way an electric kiln works is full power, no power. Full power, no power. There are relays inside, and you can hear them open and close. And when they're closed, it's full power. So how do you ramp up slowly? Well, the gaps between full power cycles, it's gonna be full power, off. Full power, off. That's the beginning of the cycle. Later on in the cycle, full power, off. Full power, off. Okay, it's on a greater percentage of the time. And when it gets to a certain point, it's just full power, straight through. And then when you get to the end, if you want to slow down, it's gonna pop off full power. It's gonna open the circuits. But that's how the temperature is controlled.
I have a question about when you load the bisque kiln, in the sense that, so we trim a week after we have made a pot and then we put it out there on the shelf.
Okay,
Approximately
so-
how long, or what are you looking for? Because if we do something big, they're still a little wet.
So drying time is a big factor, and I can see that the bottom of this pot is not the same color as the top. I can feel that it's damp. Your face is a very good indicator. You'll see people going like this to see if the pots are dry. And I wait till they're dry, and then I can bisque them.
it varies based on the temperature. Is it muggy outside? Is there a lot of moisture in the air? It's all dependent on the space, the size, and the air.
But visually, when they turn this like white colour,
Yeah.
that's, you know, you can kind of look and say, oh, this is dry. So
Yeah.
It's bone dry.
And if you're worried,
So that's
when,
why I fuss about getting people to load this rack sequentially.
yeah,
You know, we start on Monday at the bottom and we work our way to the top. So I know that these pots up here are still wet and those might be bone dry.
and that's when you would, if you thought your pots were still damp at any sort, you're throwing something thicker, something's happening, that's when you wouldn't do a fast bisque. You would do a slow bisque, so that the beginning is taking that extra time to dry it out before.
So Liz touched on drying rate. So the rate at which things dry depends on humidity and temperature and airflow. Okay? You put those three things together and that's gonna control how fast they dry. You put pots out on a breezy day in the summer with low humidity, they'll be bone dry in 2 hours. In the studio here, it takes about a week.
Speaking of drying, I know you had mentioned earlier, you know, for classes, we come in, we throw the piece, and then you all magically
Yeah.
work.
Sometimes
right out.
we do it well and
Yeah,
sometimes we
so
don't.
this is very good, so we need to talk about that. So, what's happening is, we have a fan over here on the table, we put the fan on, and, we want to get these pots off the table for the next class. So the first thing I do is I take the pots off the bat. So I wire them, and then I pick them up like this, and I get them off the bat. So that they're sitting on this wood, which is slightly absorbent. The next thing I do is I turn them upside down. And I wait till, I'm not gonna squish the pot and, it has to be firm enough to turn upside down. But I turn it upside down so the bottom catches up with the lip, because typically the lip of the pot is thinner than the foot. It's naturally gonna dry more quickly, and besides, it's exposed on two sides to the air, and the foot is only exposed on one side. So the foot on a piece like this is gonna dry fairly slowly. So how do I turn this thing over? I do this. Okay, that's how you turn it over.
And we do that with plates, but we can't leave the plates like this for very long, depending on the plate, because it will start to sag, and you don't want it to dry and sag, so then you gotta try and make sure it's strong enough. I mean, Dan knows what he
Yeah.
wants to do, but
And sometimes,
we'll pat them back down.
pat them back down.
But it's a very touchy, even in class, when we're putting away, when I'm teaching a class, I have to try and always remember, oh God, turn the fan off, because I might get the lips too dry, and I don't want the lips to get really dry, because
Yeah.
they're super fragile.
So if anything looks like it's potentially going to be a mug, I don't want the lip to get too dry, because your handle won't stick. So I flip the mugs early, and I get them off the table early. And Bennett and I always want the pots put away when they're too wet to trim. And he's very resistant to that. But I figure you guys need to learn
It's
when they're
easier.
ready to trim, and that's
Yeah.
part of your education.
It's kind of like, it's easier to have too much clay, because you can trim off more clay. It's the same thing, like if we get it too dry, it's hard to reconstitute it, if even possible, to reconstitute. The one thing I would say is, and something if you decide to do it at home, in terms of the process of making it faster, is a lot of times you will throw like a cylinder just here on the center, and you can see the outline, and you'll bring it over here. That's a lot of real estate for just a little cylinder in terms of the drying thing. And you'll see me in class, I will come over and actually move your piece. And some of the things you learn when you start throwing and start wanting to produce and be able to do a lot is you start really drying stuff out and making sure you're not throwing so that it's so wet that you can't pick it up. And they have those little chingy things that you can put under and move your pots. It's something I've been working on a lot, to try and where I get done throwing, I bring it over here, I've cut it, and I will immediately move it off the
Right.
bat. Yeah,
And if you throw fairly quickly, and you don't use a whole lot of water, and you rib the excess water off the pot, you can generally pick it
Yeah.
up right off the wheel and set
because
it
the
on the
timing's
board.
real. Like, you should really pull a pot 3 times, 15 minutes, you're done. After 15 minutes, that clay is overworked, oversaturated, and trust me, we've all been there. Half an hour later, trying to get that piece up, we all do it.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about drying.
She had a question back there.